Good morning. My name is Mike Wink. I'm Operations Section Chief with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 1, and we're here this morning for your Monday, August 30th, West Zone of the Dixie Fire update. So we're going to start here in Branch 9. No changes over there. Continuing to strengthen those control lines in the next hours and days to come. They are making really great progress, weeks and weeks of effort from all of the fire suppression efforts and all the stakeholders with utilities and roadways and all that stuff is making a lot of good progress. You should see some changes in the hours and days to come here in Branch 9. As we get up here into the park, into Branch 13, effort continues in the park to use all available resources to contain the fire in there. You don't see a lot of black line in there, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of work going on in there. They have they're doing point protection. They're doing isolated hot spots, reducing those fuels, trying to connect the dots with hand line, bringing it out to road infrastructures. So a lot of things are going on in here in and around Mount Lassen. As we get just outside the park boundaries into Shasta County, coming off of the West Prospect Mountain, once again we went down to the lava flow and then came around on a mid-slope road to Rail Canyon, and that's where the fire's edge is hanging up on that piece. And then they're bringing line down Rail Canyon to the park boundary basically, and then heading to the west along some of the trail system in there to build those containment lines. As we get a little further outside the fire's edge, we get into what I call the Old Station area. So the community of Old Station, but that also encompasses all the subdivisions and little geographical references around there that are outside the fire perimeter. So those are all included in this message. So we've got a line on the fire's edge, but then we've got secondary, contingency, and then additional lines around subdivisions, around homes, around critical infrastructure. And the message to those folks is when they get those lines in, to go back and do it again and make them bigger and make them better. We will continue those efforts in that area until there's black line here all in this Branch 13. Okay, we always have uncontrolled fire edge lends itself to having fire get away. So while the conditions are favorable for this piece, this critical infrastructure and homes and values at risk to not be threatened with this southwest wind we've been talking about for days. So the southwest wind comes from the southwest and goes to the northeast. So that is good for there. In a couple days, that could change. So let's go ahead and go to Lassen County and the Lassen sector. That's Branch 16. So over the last 36 hours here in the Caribou Wilderness, yesterday late morning, a little bit of fire activity. We had a westerly influence, right? A little bit of a westerly, I wouldn't call it a big wind, but it was enough to have fire spread going to the east. That got over our primary line. It's within our secondary. We have a contingency, another contingency, and then we have Highway 44. So they're in there going direct. We've got a good plan in place. But 44 is our next piece after those three lines, and then on the other side of 44. But 44 specifically, let's talk about that for a minute. So the fire train is on its way up there today with significant amounts of retardant and water to work basically from the A21 road on Highway 44 north all the way to Poison Lake. Okay, that is where the train tracks and our efforts are mutually right in line with each other. So they're going to be there supporting us, protecting their critical infrastructure. And right in that specific area from Bogart to Poison Lake specifically is the power lines and the communication lines, the fiber optic lines that are very critical infrastructure to everybody in this Susanville area. We don't want to have a disruption in any of the services, landlines, cell lines, and or internet. So it's really critical. We have a lot of resources in there. We're going to have aircraft in there working. We got the fire train in there. And PG&E is going to be in there. They have the ability to do what we call point protection. They have trucks with retardant on the trucks that can spray it. So while we're working on the fire's edge and working on contingency lines. They're going to be out in front spraying those poles, trying to make sure that we don't damage that critical infrastructure. Those communication lines are so important to everybody in this area. So a lot of stuff going on in Branch 16 today. That has our greatest potential on the west zone to have fire growth and rapid fire activity. So just to go back a bit, if you went back about a month ago when Team 1 was here the first time, over here just above Butte County, or right at the edge of Butte County, Tama County, we had a 2-day weather event very similar to what's going on starting today, tomorrow, and maybe into Wednesday. And the fire ran 14 miles and 157,000 acres in that 2-day period. Okay, so there is possibility that could happen on different areas of the fire, whether we're talking the east zone off of Grizzly or up here. There is that potential. The modeling currently shows that based on all of our efforts that it's going to hold in those lines. But Mother Nature depends on if she has how much spotting and pyrocumulus develops, how that's going to work. But anyway, a lot of moving parts out there. Good plan in place, good leadership, good resources. A lot of cooperators working together with all those moving parts. As we now come down off of there, going south towards Westwood, those efforts all around the Westwood area, around Lake Almanor, Chester, West Almanor, all along that 36 corridor. We continue to answer calls for service. Any smoke that you can see on the Highway 36 corridor, we have engines in there, and they're working to address that and get those hot spots put out. Okay, where they're patrolling in there, they're in there. Same thing on the Highway 36 corridor. When you talk about this blue spot right here, we call the meadow. Okay, that's highly visible from the highway. There's not a lot of water in there, so it's not really a lake right now. It's more of a moist area with some water in it. And those spots in the lake bed that have been smoking over the last week, got most of those addressed. This tree line, these stringers right in here, got most of those addressed, so feeling really good about what's happening in here. So now we're going to come down here to the Janesville branch, okay? The Janesville branch, continue to find a couple smokes, not that many, but the big, what's going on here in the Janesville branch is planning for the possibility of this piece coming off of Grizzly Peak, coming around this burn scar and coming back this way. So building lines here between Antelope Lake and the communities up here, Janesville and the Susanville Basin, we'll call it, kind of the big valley here. So building lines going to the northwest, trying to get in multiple lines going that way just in case. We always have to have multiple plans, right? And then as we're going south, southeast, same thing. We've got one line in that goes from the Janesville branch all the way down to the Beckworth complex. We're working on a second one, as well as our partners to the east are working on multiple lines on their side, because this is the other piece of the Dixie fire that has the most potential to have fire growth today, like we saw a month ago, or over the next 2 days or so, similar. So if that does happen, we have plans in place. If this were to come this way, we've got a lot of resources in here. We're putting in line. We're also then come back to the 395 corridor. From Milford south, there's lines put in about 2 weeks ago when this came into Janesville, so we're strengthening those lines around Milford. We're going along the toe of the slope. We're going around those private properties and that critical infrastructure, doing what we can to put dozer line around it. And our goal is to go all the way down to Doyle. Okay, so we have those plans in place. So a lot of moving parts going on. I've talked about the red flag a little bit. Just a reminder, yesterday, red flag in the Sacramento Valley, red flag to the north of us, red flag at Honey Lake over here, and we were sandwiched by all that stuff. Now we're in the red flag conditions starting today, sometime this afternoon. So the winds will increase this afternoon. They'll continue to increase tomorrow. And then hopefully sometime on Wednesday, that low pressure system that's above us will clear and will move out of the area and we'll go back into a more calmer wind and weather pattern. So that is your update for today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.